My experience with study abroad in South Africa in 2012, lactose intolerance and wheat allergy. It's a few years later. It's Wednesday, 27 May 2026, and here I, Tanis of Seattle, reflect on my experience with study abroad in South Africa in 2012, 6-month student visa, January 2012 to June 2012, focusing on my wheat allergy and lactose intolerance. So this one, I have a playlist, international travel with medical restrictions, and I really thought about like border crossings, immunizations, that kind of stuff. And I was like, well, how about a different type of medical restriction? How about, so these are a type of medical restriction, dietary restrictions. But depending on the severity, it can come with actual medication. But it is a restriction that I needed to take into account as part of my international travel. In this case, study abroad in South Africa in 2012. And so I decided to cover it a little bit for that reason. And it was a formative time for this and experience in terms of my own eating habits, food selection skills, and then my cardiology self-experimentation. So cardiology is study of the heart, and including that the blood system connected to the heart. And so it was approximately 2011. I was going to University of Washington Medicine here in the Seattle area, and they did some testing, and I was found to have a wheat allergy, and it was like a elevated response to lactose or something, lactose intolerance. So wheat allergy is not the same as gluten intolerant. Wheat is like a if something says like a subcategory, so to speak, but it's not. An intolerance and an allergy, they process differently physiologically. And as I found out, and so like there's gluten, and then there's like wheat. So like in terms of scope, wheat allergy is smaller in scope than gluten intolerance in terms of like the foods it applies to. So I can eat things that are gluten intolerant. However, somebody who's gluten intolerant might not necessarily be able to eat something that just says contains, like if they're avoiding things that contain wheat, right, that might not be the whole picture for them. Okay. So and that was approximately 2011. So, and I was like, I have no idea. That's like all carbohydrates and all dairy. Well, and lactose is unique to cow milk. So, if somebody says they have problems with all cheese because they're lactose intolerant, it's actually cow's milk. So, like, I was like, so I can have goat cheese, but goat cheese isn't like the most common of the, the cheeses, depending on where one is, kind of thing. So I was like, okay. So I had already kind of like noted, self-observed, my own kind of like digestive responses to lactose products, and there was some stuff that always tasted a certain way, and I was like the only one in the family that tasted it that way, like my family growing up. And so it was kind of like the wheat allergy was more of a surprise, and the lactose intolerance was kind of like more of like and so I was like, I don't know how to change everything. And then I went to Africa, and instead of ground pork on the shelves, it was ground ostrich. And so the food was a little, including meat offerings, was a little bit different. But like I went out and they had like zebra at the buffet. It's instead of steak, it was zebra. So, and this was in an urban area, populated area, so the food was a bit different, and I was like, this is the perfect shake up for me to be like, maybe I should try to like be selective in what I eat. And it was like a base layer food selection kind of criteria in terms of like there were kind of two levels. So there was we went out to eat at a place that had like burgers and steaks and stuff like that. And I was like, well, a cheeseburger has it was one of the more severe, like that I restricted my diet. Had a bun and cheese, and I was like, that's wheat and that's dairy, and so I was like, I'm going with the steak with side salad. Okay. And so I, like, every time we went out, I ordered that steak and side salad, and I was like, are you going to stick with that? And I'm going, I got the rest of my day to think about. This is like one point of my day where we can go out to a restaurant and I can get the same thing, and I don't have to worry about the dairy or the wheat. Right. So I did. I ended up eating the same thing just because I was like, I needed that control, that I knew that it wouldn't affect my allergy or my intolerance. So, and that's an example of, that's actually something I did. And then at the store, I learned a little bit about control, which comes in at my experiment design for my cardiology self-experimentation and physiology self-experimentation. And then, so there's one, and then another one was at the store. I started kind of observing yogurts, which I've found out non-fat yogurt can be a hit or a miss, but if I add a little bit of, like, I get a little bit of a higher fat content, I can be cow's milk and I'll do much better than if it's no fat. A little bit of fat helps a lot. For my stomach, my digestive system, my body, I fart less too. Anyway, and burp less. And then, so there was that one. I kind of started on that. And then the big one was, I had been eating a lot of like whole wheat, and they're like, whole wheat's really good for you. And I'm like, unless you're allergic to wheat, and then whole wheat's really bad for you. And so I was like, I'm just not going to eat whole wheat. And so it was kind of like a blanket switch. But then I was like, I found I had to, my palate changed with that. Tastes changed with the, even if whole wheat tastes good, it's not worth the like 6-hour cramps and farting that comes with it. Right. And the cramps aren't a good thing, and my body's not processing it where it's an allergic reaction set to wheat. So I learned, while 7 grains or whole wheat might be great for some people, it's not for me. I'm allergic to that. So for real, so it was a very foundational experience, actually. So there we go. That was my experience with study abroad in South Africa in 2012, lactose intolerance and wheat allergy.